All right, we're back. Hello, hello, hello. By the way, here I go. Going to this will probably blow. No, but so hello, 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 right? The sort of greeting. There's a pop song by a band called Matchbox 20. Um, and it's called "Let's See How Far We've Come," right? So like how far we've come, which is interesting. And it is a song that starts out with, I think, "Hello, hello, hello." So I don't know. That's interesting, right? That's an interesting sort of tidbit. Did I steal? So the question you'd ask, right, is obviously, did I steal it from them, right? Well, I probably had it in my memory for sure, but consciously, did I steal it? And so that's an interesting question, right? Because I think that there is there's so much of sort of ideas, right? They build off other ideas, in my opinion. I mean, that's just, see, for me, like my mind, that's my conception of how ideas work, right? Like, certainly there's inspiration that comes from within. And maybe, like I said, like, I don't know if that's sort of, well, that's me, right? That's like, in other words, like, if I just don't have a lot of inspiration. I mean, these are very very inspirational videos, aren't they? But it's, I kid, but at the same time, this is the type of stuff that you know people will sort of say this defines who you are, right? Like, oh, I'm the guy who says hello, 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 and so therefore I am, you know, I'm sort of, I think a certain way. I don't know. And to me, it's very interesting. It's also, like I said, as we've discussed and will continue to discuss, it's very disconcerting because, like I said, I don't know how other people form ideas, right? I think ideation in general is probably a very elusive process to sort of conceptualize in a reflective manner, right? I mean, I don't know. I'd be interested. Question of the day, right? Have we done? I think I've been okay with question of the day. Question of the day: how do you get your ideas, and how? Like, what are you aware of your process? That used to be like one of the questions they'd ask all the musicians. Like, I remember they were like, "Oh, where did the ideas come from?" And it's interesting because, like I said, I don't I do. I mean, I dabble in some type of creative process. Obviously, as you can tell, I don't consider myself to be the most creative person. That's probably an understatement. At the same time, however, I've never wanted to believe that I was sort of retarded when it came to creativity, and that's the distinction, right? It's sort of like and with all of this stuff, right? With all of this stuff, there is a sort of certain willful blindness to the idea, and the question becomes, how willful is it? That's a real issue, because I don't feel like I just live my life and I do the things that I want to do. Am I sort of living just for experience because I'm not being creative or not? People would say that, and like I said, it's interesting. It's also, it can be. I mean, it's hard for me to not. It's hard for me to not think that my place in society is defined by sort of expectations that society has upon me, placed upon me, or sort of, what have you done for us lately, right? I'm trying to make videos, right? So that's to say, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think, let me just segue, because like I said, we like to talk about our day here. And the day was okay. I mean, the day was good. The day was, because I want to talk about some other stuff. I mean, because part of what I'm trying to do is really get down to, sort of what makes all this stuff more concrete and more sort of specific to other things, right? But the first part about it is the fact that I had a okay day, right? Like, it was one of those days where it was same as always, right? Like, not too bad. Sometimes people ask me like, "Oh, how was your day?" And I usually respond with same old, because to me, like, a lot of days are the same, right? And you might beg the question of, well, is that because you need new experiences, right? Well, no, I think it's because I think there's a certain willfulness in terms of routine, right? So, like I said, it's just this idea of like, oh, you're sort of, you have habits versus not habits. So, it's another question. Like I said, I know we've talked a lot about this, but I really am curious about how sort of the drive for new experiences contrasts with the drive for routine, right? And we talked about this. I know we've talked about this earlier about how one of the central maybe excuse me, one of the central conflicts, especially in our modern world, right? At least for me, I don't know. This might be something where I'm all alone here, but at least for me, like there's sort of this idea of like sort of taking risks versus not, and I think that can manifest in getting new experiences versus not getting new experiences, and the question becomes, is that somehow based more than sort of your willfulness? In other words, like, is there sort of this idea that if you live for experiences, I mean, I guess if it's not like new experiences, it's something different. I don't know. It's just very interesting to me because like I said, like I don't know what you asked me what I live for. I mean, I know what I live for. It's kind of personal. I don't actually want to actually talk about it here, but there is this idea that well, to be a certain type of person, you ought to live for experiences. And I guess the question is, are you aware that you live for experiences or not? And if you're not, do you nonetheless still live for experiences? And then the question obviously is, how do we know, right? Because it is, like I said, I get back to this whole idea of, the die is cast, right? You're sort of, and what I mean by that is, that's probably a bad expression, but what I mean by that is, it's very frustrating when you are someone who wants to believe not only in free will, right, or some of this idea of like man ought to control his own destiny, but man ought to be the owner of the destiny that's handed to him in some level, right? Like, let's like, okay, another question. I guess the third question of the day. I can't even remember the two questions, but here's an example. Like, what do we think about Harry Potter, right? So Harry Potter, right? He went to Hogwarts. First of all, I think he was invited to Hogwarts, right? It's funny because I saw somewhere they were like, can you imagine what would happen if Harry Potter was like, I think it was a YouTube video, but they were like, oh, Harry Potter says no, like he gets invited to go to Hogwarts, like the Hagrid tells him he's a wizard, and Harry Potter's like, no, I don't want to be a wizard, right? And then, then nothing happens. But there was some idea of choice there. And you might say, well, what choice? That was your destiny, right? But it was your destiny in the form of a willingness to say yes, right? And so, it's like, oh, I had no choice because, I mean, someone gives you the keys to a kingdom. What are you supposed to do? Someone gives you, you get accepted in something. What are you supposed to do? And so, it's very interesting in that way. But the thing I really wanted to focus on with Harry Potter is the fact that, what do we think about the sorting hat, right? A lot of people, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are like, what do you mean? Like, this is what, but the hat chooses, right? The hat chose, it was a Gryffindor for Harry. Wasn't Harry, I don't remember Hogwarts now. I mean, I remember Harry Potter now, but wasn't like Harry Potter, the hat told him where to go. He was assigned to Gryffindor. And you might say, well, that's no big deal, obviously. However, right, it does beg the question of, who's in charge of the destiny at that moment, right? And, you might say that, if I were Harry Potter, right, I would probably be like, whatever, you got, like, I guess I'm going to go to Hogwarts, because I'm with someone to go to Gryffindor, I don't know any different, because you don't know, you don't have any real way to distinguish between, Gryffindor or Slytherin or whatever. But at the same time, if you really wanted to go to Slytherin, right, if I really saw myself as a Slytherin guy, then what do I do? You know, like it doesn't matter. So yeah, it's interesting. It's just interesting, and it's like imagine if we lived in a society where society told you what house you had to go to, and like I said, I mean, people could be fine with it, whatever, but it does raise the question of sort of like, is that a choice that ought to be made for us? Or is there a way to say, I just want to go to Slytherin? Well, you got to apply to Slytherin. Slytherin might not accept you. That's obviously on them. But, do you have an opportunity to prove yourself for Slytherin? And if you can, what can you do? I don't know why I'm picking Slytherin, but yeah, whatever. Anyway, have a good rest of your Sunday, guys. I will be whining about not being a wizard. So yeah, bye.